Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe because today we are diving into one of the most unbelievable, breathtaking, emotional Britain's Got Talent moments ever captured on stage. Trust me, once you hear what happened with this choir, you won't forget it. This is one of those performances that hits your heart before your brain even understands what's happening. And by the end, every judge, every person in the room, and probably you watching through your screen will be left absolutely stunned. So let's get into the story that has taken the world by storm. It began like any other audition day. The theater was packed, the judges were settling into their seats, the crew was running around making sure cameras were ready, and backstage, dozens of acts nervously waited for their moment. Among them was a choir that, at first glance, didn't look like anything unusual. They weren't dressed in matching outfits. They weren't holding props. They stood calmly together, quietly talking amongst themselves. No one could have guessed what was about to unfold. As they walked out on stage, the audience applauded politely. Amanda smiled warmly, Alicia leaned forward with curiosity, Bruno had that wild sparkle in his eyes, and Simon sat with his usual calm but calculating expression, the one that tells you he's already forming an opinion before you even speak. The choir's leader stepped to the microphone, his hands shaking just slightly, and introduced the group as a community choir made up of regular people from all walks of life. Teachers, nurses, retirees, teenagers, construction workers, parents, students. Everyone standing on that stage was there because singing helped them through something, and they wanted to share that healing with the world. Simon raised an eyebrow, as he often does when an act sounds too ordinary. Another choir, another song, another hopeful performance. Or so he thought. The leader continued speaking, explaining that the choir wasn't just about music. It was about connection and about finding strength after loss, after heartbreak, after fear, and after moments when life becomes difficult. He said there were people in the choir who had lost loved ones, people who were recovering from illnesses, people who had lived through depression, loneliness, and uncertainty. And when he said the words that singing together had saved some of their lives, the audience grew quiet. Simon leaned back, arms crossed. Not dismissive, but listening more closely. When the music started, it was soft. So soft that people in the back rows leaned forward. The first voice began alone, trembling just slightly, singing a haunting, emotional opening line that echoed through the room. Then a second voice joined. Then a third. And before the audience could blink, the entire choir moved into harmony, not loud or dramatic at first, but gentle, layered, pure. The kind of sound that fills the room like warm light. The audience's faces changed almost instantly. Eyes softened. People let out slow breaths. Something magical was happening, but no one could quite describe it. Even the judges noticed. Alicia placed one hand over her chest. Amanda whispered something under her breath. Bruno froze entirely, staring with wide eyes. And Simon, the hardest one to impress, suddenly sat up straighter, his expression shifting. Whatever he expected, it wasn't this. As the song grew, it was as if every emotion the choir had carried into that theater poured out all at once. Their voices rose, powerful and unified, yet somehow individual stories could still be felt in the harmonies. A mother who sang for the child she lost. A teenager who sang because singing gave him confidence when nothing else did. A teacher fighting through burnout. A man recovering from anxiety who never thought he'd stand on a stage like this. All of their stories were woven into the sound. The audience didn't just hear the choir. They felt them. At one point, the choir leader stepped forward and sang a short solo. His voice cracked on one note, and instead of breaking the moment, it made everyone lean in even more. It wasn't perfect. It was real, raw, honest. And that honesty had more power than any perfectly polished performance could ever have. The music swelled, and for the first time, the choir's sound exploded into full volume. Not chaotic, not overwhelming, but breathtaking. The kind of sound that vibrates in your chest and gives you goosebumps even through a TV screen. The lights shifted subtly, illuminating their faces as waves of harmony washed across the room. People in the audience began crying. Not just crying quietly, but crying openly. Some wiping tears, some holding their hands over their faces, some clutching the shoulders of the people next to them. The atmosphere changed completely, from a normal talent show to a moment of shared humanity. When the song reached its final note, the choir didn't just stop singing. They seemed to let the song settle, holding the silence like it was part of the performance. And that silence was powerful. No one clapped at first because they couldn't. They were too stunned. Then, as if the room suddenly woke up from a trance, the audience erupted. A standing ovation swept the theater like a wave. People stood instantly, shouting, cheering, screaming, applauding with everything they had. Amanda wiped tears from her face and laughed through them. Alicia was crying too, fanning her eyes. Bruno clapped so hard his rings probably hurt his hands. And Simon, the one who almost never shows deep emotion, actually smiled. A real, heartfelt smile. He nodded slowly, a gesture that told the whole world he knew he had just experienced something unforgettable. When it was time for the judges to speak, Amanda tried first, but she had to stop because her voice cracked. She took a deep breath and said she felt like the choir didn't just perform a song, they told a story. A story of resilience, of hope, of people supporting each other. She said the performance was healing to watch. Alicia said the choir reminded everyone of the power of community, of how strangers can become family through music. She said they not only sang beautifully, but they lifted the entire room. Bruno called the performance an emotional earthquake. A shockwave of humanity that no one saw coming. Then it was Simon's turn. The theater went silent. Everyone leaned in. Simon said that in all the years he had been judging talent shows, he had never seen a choir quite like this one. He said he believed choirs were capable of greatness, but very few could move an entire room the way this group did. He said the performance wasn't perfect technically, and that was exactly why it was perfect emotionally. And then, for a moment, his voice softened. He told them they reminded him why he loves this show. And that's when it happened. Simon reached forward and hit the golden buzzer. The theater exploded. The choir gasped, some screaming, some sobbing, some covering their mouths in shock. Gold confetti rained down from the ceiling, sparkling in the lights as the choir embraced each other. Some members collapsed into tears, overwhelmed by the emotion of the moment. The audience screamed with joy, jumping out of their seats. Even backstage, other performers cried as they watched the monitors. The choir stood there, surrounded by falling gold, their faces lit with a mixture of disbelief, gratitude, and joy. Their leader wiped tears from his eyes as he looked at his choir members, each of whom had gone through their own battles to reach this moment. And now here they were, holding hands, standing under golden rain, heading straight to the live shows. Moments like this don't happen often. Moments that feel bigger than a performance. Moments that remind you that talent isn't just notes, or technique, or choreography. Sometimes talent is heart. Sometimes it's courage. Sometimes it's surviving something and still finding your voice. This choir did all of that and more. What happened on that stage became one of the most replayed and talked about BGT performances of the season. Social media exploded with reactions. People around the world shared their own stories after hearing the choir's message.